the Xhosa nation is a culture of great charisma and depth. But beneath this rich fabric lies a formidable spirit of courage. For over a century, the Xhosa waged 9 relentless frontier wars against the Dutch and then the British, a struggle marked by strategic brilliance and an unwavering resolve to protect their way of life. This saga of courage and resistance is not just a chapter in a history book. It is the very soul of a people, a spirit that echoes through generations. This is a brief history of how the Xhosa came to be. Episode 1. The House of Tshawe. The 18th century in Xhosa history is defined by the House of Phalo, a direct descendant of the AmaTshawe royal lineage. It was a time of momentous change, as Phalo's household was permanently divided into the 2 powerful branches known as the Great House and the right-hand house. But this narrative begins much earlier. To truly understand the Phalo dynasty, one must trace its origins back 6 generations to the founding ancestor Tshawe, whose rise to royalty laid the foundation for all subsequent generations of the Xhosa Kingdom. To understand the history of the Xhosa nation, we must first grapple with the very nature of history itself, especially when recounting the past of a society where oral traditions have long been paramount. A nation's history is more than a list of dates. For the Xhosa, much like many African societies, it is a living, breathing thing, passed down through the ages not in written texts, but through the breath of a storyteller. The Xhosa call these tales amabali. They are rich with heroes and battles, with lessons and warnings, and they live in the hearts of a people. They are the very bedrock of their collective memory. These stories are meant to entertain, to teach, and to explain how the present came to be. It is with this understanding that we turn to the story of the AmaTshawe royal house. Some historians suggest that generations before the establishment of the AmaTshawe as rulers, there was a literal man named Xhosa, from whom the nation traces its lineage. This is debated, however, as some traditions suggest that the name Xhosa came from the Khoi tribes, in their descriptions of the clashes with this new clan that had settled in the land. What might be perhaps even more surprising to some is that the Xhosa nation, in its current form, is not descended from a single ancestor. Rather, it is a mosaic of different peoples, a complex web of clans which came under the Tshawe royal house. Before the rise of the AmaTshawe, the land was a patchwork of independent clans, each with its own chiefs, distinct praises, and unique origins. This rich and varied landscape of clans was about to be unified under a new royal lineage. Before we delve deeper into the story, let us take a moment to look at the royal family tree. This brief journey through the lineage will help us understand the relationships between the key characters who would become central to the unfolding history. The lineage of the Xhosa royal family, the AmaTshawe clan, is a narrative woven through centuries of succession, beginning with the foundational figure of Malangana. The line continues through Nkosi, who had 3 sons, Tshawe, Ciha, and Jwaha. Though Tshawe was younger, it was through his lineage that the dynasty would be established. The royal line proceeded from Tshawe to his son, Nchwangu, who fathered Sikomo. Sikomo's son was Togu, whose own son Nzonde continued the line. Nzonde's son, Tshiwo, holds a pivotal place in the history as the father of Phalo, the king whose reign would define a nation. Among Phalo's sons were Dzaleka, from whom the great house would proceed, and Hahabe, from whom the right-hand house would come. The two royal houses continued from these brothers. From Dzaleka's line came his son Kawuta, whose own son, the legendary King Hintsa, would continue the great house's line. The right-hand house, meanwhile, continued through Hahabe's son Malawu, and then to his son, the powerful Nkrika. Nkrika had two notable sons, Sandile and Makoma, with the royal line continuing through Sandile. Now that we see the connections in this rich history, let us go deeper into the stories that brought this family and their kingdom to life. Our journey begins not with a grand coronation, but with a simple hunt and a family feud that would define a kingdom. In the early days of the Xhosa polity, before the widespread dominance of the AmaTshawe, the AmaTshawe clan held the principal chieftainship. It was into this setting that Tshawe, a figure destined to alter the political landscape, arrived at his father Nkosiamtu's place. At this time, the leadership of the paramountcy had passed on to Ciha, the elder son of Nkosiamtu. He ruled by the iron grip of tradition and a rigid adherence to protocol. His power, however, was beginning to fade. His younger brother, the charismatic Tshawe, was steadily amassing a following of his own. Tshawe was not the main heir, but had a significant following, forming the nucleus of a powerful new chiefdom. A great general hunt had been called. The hunt was more than a way to secure food. It was a political event, a symbol of the chief's ability to provide for his people. As custom dictated, the principal chief was entitled to the most prized portion of any large game killed. When Tshawe's men brought down a magnificent bluebuck, a messenger from Ciha's court arrived, not to celebrate, but to demand the king's share. Tshawe's gaze was fixed on the antelope, a small but powerful symbol of his own growing strength. A murmur ran through his camp. To refuse would be an act of outright defiance, but to give in would be to acknowledge a king who no longer provided for his people. In a moment of high-stakes political theater, Tshawe refused. "The animal is too small," he declared, his voice cutting through the tension. He argued that insisting on a royal privilege at the expense of his people, the very people who had joined him in this hunt, contravened the ethic of generosity, a cardinal virtue of good leadership. This single act of defiance was a bold challenge to the very foundation of Ciha's rule. Ciha's demand was set against Tshawe's ambition for independence. The people, seeing the courage in Tshawe's words, sided with him, and Ciha was overthrown. The AmaTshawe lineage, supported by their powerful allies, rose to prominence, consolidating power and establishing the royal house that would rule for centuries to come. This story of sibling rivalry is a poetic memory of a brutal conquest. Historians believe the AmaTshawe, with their allies, systematically conquered and incorporated various existing clans. The Amarudulu, a clan originally from the Mpondomise, played a crucial role by assisting the AmaTshawe in their conflict against the AmaTshawe. For their crucial help, they were offered chiefship but declined, choosing instead to serve the new royal clan. They were consequently rewarded with high status as counselors. Traditions confirm that other clans like the Amatipa, Amangwevu, which the Amarudulu became known as, and Amakokwa were incorporated by Tshawe, becoming one nation under his rule. This powerful narrative explains the very foundation of Xhosa kingship, a power built on both conquest and a deep respect for the people. The kingdom forged by Tshawe was not a fixed, singular entity, but a dynamic, ever-expanding network. The fundamental unit of power was the homestead, headed by a father, and this model was scaled up to the highest levels of government. All sons of a chief were considered chiefs in their own right, and they were ranked according to their mother's status. The sons of the great wife and the right-hand wife were of particular importance, as they were the heirs to their father's authority. This system of segmentation was both its greatest strength and its most significant weakness. A father would tell his sons, "Go and extend the homestead. Set up an outstation." This practice was designed to release pressure and allow the polity to expand continuously, absorbing new groups and creating new semi-autonomous chiefdoms. This process created a rich mix of clans with diverse origins, some of Sotho ancestry, others of Tembu royalty, and even some from the Khoi. Tshawe's rise to royalty forged a powerful legacy, one that would guide his descendants for generations. The system he founded, designed for growth and cohesion, proved remarkably effective. As the generations that followed spread out, the kingdom expanded not only in territory, but in social complexity, absorbing new peoples and redefining its power structures. Around the time of Tshawe's grandson Untold, a lineage of the Tembu royal clan, the Amamaya, fled Tembu political disputes and sought refuge with the Xhosa, becoming a tributary clan. This brought with them the AmaTshawe, renowned for their iron-working skills, who became an independent clan, and the amabali, who were incorporated with the Amamaya. The expansion was not always peaceful. During the reign of Tshawe, Nkonde's son, several Khoi clans were involuntarily incorporated after the defeat of the Khoi chief Hinsati by Mdange, Tshawe's brother. These absorbed clans included the Amasukwini and Amagwashu. Later, the Isitatu clan of mixed Khoi and San descent was also incorporated after a victory by Hahabe. The Xhosa polity was a complex web of power and allegiance. The Amandluncha emerged as a significant political grouping of clans, with the Amankubane as their dominant element. They provided leading counselors during the reigns of Phalo and Xhosa. The Amagikwa, identified as Khoi, were voluntarily incorporated and achieved high status as counselors for the Xhosa paramounts. Even clans of Sotho origin, like the Amabanko and Amavundle, were voluntarily incorporated. But this system, so effective for peaceful expansion, held the seeds of civil war. As chiefs and their sons moved further apart, both geographically and genealogically, the personal bonds of family and shared experience that held the kingdom together began to fray, and nowhere was this more evident than in the family of the great King Phalo. As we shall see, King Phalo, at the very height of his power, would be forced to a fateful crossroads. He would soon make a decision that would forever alter the destiny of the kingdom.